So as you all know, we are going to do a series of sessions. We call it as a rapid revision batch. So in total we are going to have some sessions around 17 to 18 hours. Somewhere around 17 to 18 hours we will be conducting these sessions. In these sessions our main agenda will be to discuss to revise the entire concepts of the auditing ones. Our entire subject, we want to revise it within this 17 or 18 hours, right? So it is actually a very short period of time. So we will follow some order. We will not go as per the index. We will follow some order. Why? Because there is a chapter, if you all are aware, there is a chapter company audit. You all know that company audit, everyone can just go through once and can remember all the provisions. So what we did was we planned to revise this company audit chapter at the last. We will keep it as a last priority. So like that, there will be a little bit in a change of the order of discussing. Some concepts has been taken to the end. Some concepts has been brought forward on the basis of the priority, on the basis of the importance, right? So totally in this 17 to 18 hours, we will be going to cover, we will be going to revise the entire auditing material. Okay. So this is the agenda for our sessions. For having these sessions, this is the main agenda, right? So I think you all are aware, the title of our subject is auditing and assurance. The title of our subject is auditing and assurance, right? So in this subject we are going to discuss nothing but the provisions which are there in the standards on auditing, okay? So in this entire subject, almost all 80% of the concept will be 80% of the questions or 80% of the theory questions or practical questions, whatever we are going to discuss, 80% has been taken from the standards only, right? So the remaining 20% of the syllabus, that is some practical concepts which are taken practically, or some other laws and provisions like company audit. Company audit has been taken from the provisions of Companies Act. It is not from a standard, it is actually a practical concept. And if you observe, audit of items of financial statements, audit of different entities, right? This is also taken from standards. Bank audit. So these we are taken from the guidelines of the RBI and Banking Regulation Act. So out of our entire syllabus, 20% of the syllabus is only the content other than the standards. 80% of the syllabus, 80% of the concepts, 80% of the questions which we have discussed, those all are taken from the standards only. Only 20% of the concept like this company audit, audit of items of financial statements, audit of different entities, bank audit, all these are other than the standards, right? So we are going to revise them, okay? And one more thing, during this revision I will try to cover what is the pattern of this MCQs, how the MCQs can be asked in the examination. We will try to cover that also. Okay, so we will have some focus on what is the pattern of asking on the questions, especially MCQ questions and true or false questions, and also different manners of asking the question. We will try to cover that also to some extent, but our main agenda will be, as I said, it will be to revise the entire subject within this duration of 17 to 18 hours. That will be our main agenda. While doing that, I will try to cover the examination pattern also. I will try to cover what is the pattern of asking the questions in the examination also, right? So I have told you that 80% of the syllabus is already taken from the standards only. So let us go through the indexed ones and let us see what and all taken in the standards, right? So if you observe this concept, fundamentals of auditing, this fundamentals of auditing is actually, you will not be able to find this chapter in a board material. This fundamentals of auditing chapter you will not be able to find out in the board material. So this chapter we have sorted, we have taken from the entire auditing subject. In order to understand this subject of auditing, we require to understand some basic terminology. We are required to understand some basic terminology. So throughout the entire material, what are these basic terms which requires understanding? For a better understanding of the entire subject, we have identified a few concepts, and we have all taken that together and we have put it under a separate chapter named fundamentals of auditing. So that's why you will not be able to find this chapter in the ICI material also. Right? So ICI material directly goes into the technical aspects. It will directly start discussing about technical aspects. But what are the basic terms which we are required to understand before going into the technical aspects of the subject? That was not given in the board material, but what we did was we have identified those concepts, the terms which are very much essential to understand in order to have a proper understanding of the entire auditing subject. We have identified a few concepts and we have taken out that separately, and we have put it under a single place, and we have given a title as fundamentals of auditing. Right? Next, first chapter, nature, objective and scope of audit. So what is this nature, scope and objective, and scope of audit? In this we are going to discuss nothing but SA 200. In first chapter, nature, objective and scope of audit, we are going to discuss the provisions of SA 200, SA 210 and SA 220. In first chapter, that is nothing but nature, objective and scope of the audit. In that chapter, we are nothing but discussing the provisions of SA 200, SA 210 and SA 220. Next, this company audit. In this company audit chapter also, if you remember, in this chapter there will be two standards, which is SA 299. There will be SA 299 which deals with the joint audit, and also we will be discussing about SA 610 which is the standard which deals about the internal audit, usage of the internal auditor's work. Right? Next, when you come to audit reporting is nothing but a combination of standards only. In audit reporting, whatever you are going to discuss, whatever we are going to revise, all these are nothing but the content given in SA 700, SA 701, SA 705, SA 706. SA 705, 706. So all these are four standards put together. We call that chapter as a audit reporting. Right? Cooperative Societies audit is actually the provisions which are contained in the Cooperative Societies Act. It is also one of the practical concept. It is also not covered from the standards. It is also taken from the Cooperative Societies Act. Next, come to audit documentation and audit evidence. So in this chapter, we are going to discuss about the provisions of SA 500 and SA 230. SA 500 deals about audit evidence and SA 230 discusses about audit documentation. So those two standards we are going to read in audit documentation and evidence. Next, fraud and responsibilities of auditor. So this sixth chapter is nothing but SA 240. This fraud and responsibilities of the auditor, it is nothing but we are going to discuss about SA 240 content. Next, audit in an automated environment. This audit in an automated environment, this is nothing but this is taken completely from the SA 315. SA 315, and also audit of banks. It is actually a separate area. It is not there from the standards. Then there is a separate chapter, standards on auditing. Other than that, this risk assessment and internal control, this is also taken from SA 315 only. Risk assessment and internal controls also is taken from the SA 315. Next, this audit strategy, planning and program. This is taken from SA 300. This chapter is taken from SA 300. Audit sampling, SA 530. Right? Next, analytical procedures, SA 520. Right? So all these chapters are nothing but, if you observe, all these chapters are nothing but these and all we have taken from the standards only. So that's why what I am telling you is 80% of the content which we are discussing, it is completely standards on auditing only. Remaining that 20% is only some practical areas. So other than standards, whatever chapters are there, so company audit to some extent, right? Then cooperative societies audit, it is also not discussed in the standards on auditing. Okay, next audit of banks, it is also separate chapter, it is also separate from the standards. Next, and what else is left? Yeah, this audit of items of financial statements, government audit, different types of audit, all these are also not these will also not form part of the standards on auditing. Other than that, everything else is taken from the standards on auditing only. Okay, so these three concepts are also not taken from the standards, and these are the chapters, and separately we are having a chapter called standards on auditing. In that standards on auditing, other than these standards, we are going to discuss about SA 250, right, compliance with the laws and regulations. Then we will discuss about SA 501, special considerations, SA 510, external confirmations, right. Next what else will be there? SA 560, SA 570, subsequent events, going concern, SA 580, written representation. So these are all the standards which we are going to cover. There are totally 35 auditing standards. Out of that 35 auditing standards, some are left out, like some standards are left out from your syllabus. Other than that, majority of the standards are covered in your IPCC level only, in your CA Inter level only. Okay, so this is about the introduction to the subject. Now, so let us directly go into the concept. So we will start with the fundamentals of auditing. We will start directly with the fundamentals of auditing. Okay, now, so what is there in this fundamentals of auditing chapter? First of all, we have to know about the definition of the audit. We have to know about the definition of the audit. So if you remember, the auditor, what he is going to do? Auditor, what he is going to do? Auditor, his ultimate responsibility is to express an opinion. Auditor's ultimate responsibility is to express an opinion, and also we know that the opinions are broadly classified into unmodified opinion and modified opinion. As per the audit reporting chapter, we will come to know, or I have already told you that these revision classes which we are taking with the intention or with the assumption that you all people might have gone through the entire auditing material once. Okay guys, so auditor, the ultimate objective of the auditor is to express an opinion, right? So this opinion, we know that these are broadly classified into unmodified opinion and modified opinion. But as of now, I will tell you, before going into the terminology, we will use some simple and basic terminology. Opinions will be two types: positive opinion, negative opinion. Positive opinion will be two categories, that is positive opinion, negative opinion. So what are they? If the auditor expresses unqualified opinion or unmodified opinion, he is telling that financial statements are giving a true and fair view only. Next, or he can also say qualified opinion. See, qualified is also a positive only, subject to exceptions. Qualified is also a kind of positive opinion only, but subject to exceptions. What the auditor will say in the qualified opinion? Financial statements are giving a true and fair view only, except some items, right? So that's why qualified opinion also, it is sort of a positive opinion only. And negative opinion means directly what? It is an adverse opinion, right? And also, if the auditor is not able to express an opinion on the financial statements, then we say there will be a disclaimer of opinion, right? So this is actually, if you use the layman language, the opinions are classified into three categories: positive opinion, negative opinion, and no opinion. But as per the standards on auditing, they have given only broadly two categories of opinions only. What is how they have broadly categorized the audit opinion? Directly, all these they will tell as modified opinion. All of them will come under the category of modified opinion and unmodified opinion. Okay, so this is how auditor's opinion has been classified. Now, what is the definition of the audit? What is the definition of the audit? So the term audit has been defined as, it is an independent examination of financial information of an entity, whether or not profit oriented and irrespective of its size or legal form, when such an examination is conducted with a view to express an opinion. So just now we have seen that what do you mean by expressing of the opinion? Just now we have came to know what do you mean by expressing of the opinion. What do you mean by expressing of the opinion? The auditor has to give an opinion, either that opinion could be positive opinion, negative opinion, and as per the standards there are only broadly two categories of opinion, that is unmodified and modified. So the ultimate objective is to express an opinion on the financial statements. Is to express an opinion on the financial statements. On what he is going to give this opinion, the auditor is going to give this opinion on the financial information. On what auditor is going to give the opinion? On financial information, the auditor is going to give the opinion. On financial information, the auditor is going to give the opinion. Now, why auditor's opinion is required? Why auditor's opinion is required? First of all, for example, there are a set of shareholders. There are some set of shareholders. So what the shareholders will do? These shareholders will give their capital to a few board of directors. So if you go to Reliance company, there are 14 directors. If you go to the Infosys company, there will be 8 directors. But when you try to verify how many number of shareholders are there, Reliance company may be having some more than 1 crore shareholders. The Infosys company can be having some lakhs of shareholders. So what these shareholders will do? They will buy the shares. Nothing but if they are buying the shares, what does that mean? They are giving the capital to this board of directors. They are giving the capital to this board of directors. For example, there is a Reliance company. The Reliance company is having some crores of shareholders, right? So all they wanted to invest in the company. So what they did? They bought the shares of the company. So whatever the money they have paid for the shares, that will go to the 14 board of directors. What this board of directors will do? They will conduct the business. They will do the business, right? They will do sales, right? They will incur expenses, everything they will do, and they will show the profit. Now the shareholders want to know what is the profit of this entity. So for that purpose, what the board of directors will do? They will prepare the financial statements. They will prepare balance sheet. Right, so it will contain assets, right, fixed assets, current assets, and it will contain equity and reserves and surpluses, right. There will be liabilities. So for example, this company is presenting fixed assets of 100 crores, current assets of 100 crores, equity some 30 crores, reserves and surpluses some 70 crores, liabilities also 100 crores. This is the balance sheet that they have shown, 200 crores total of assets and liabilities. And they have also prepared a profit and loss statement. They have also prepared a profit and loss statement. So in the profit and loss statement, they are showing sales turnover as some 100 crores, some expenses as 70 crores, and profit as 30 crores. Okay, 100. Okay, board of directors have done the business. They have taken the capital from the shareholders. They have done the business and they want to communicate the results of this business. What is the assets they are having? What is the liabilities that they are having? What is the profit that they are earning? How they will communicate to the shareholders? By way of this financial statements. Right? Okay, now financial statements, the shareholders can go and directly review that financial statements, no? But actually here there is a problem. As a shareholder you have invested. As a board of directors they have done the business. So the shareholder cannot generally go and verify the accounts of the company. He doesn't know whether this picture shown in the balance sheet, whether this assets is total 200, it is correct or not. Or this profit they are showing it as 30 crores, whether it is a correct profit or not. They are not able to trust the board of directors. Why? Because the board of directors have only taken the money, they have only done the business, they have only prepared the financial statements, and now they are only asking you to rely on the financial statements prepared by them. They are only asking you to rely on the financial statements prepared by them. So as a shareholder, even if the right to verify the books of accounts, everything was given to you, will you be able to understand the financial statements? Will all the shareholders will have a capacity to understand the financial statements? No, right? I have given you a simple balance sheet and profit and loss, but the company financial statements will be prepared as per Schedule 3. They will contain balance sheet in some separate format. They will contain profit and loss in some other format. They will contain statement of profit and loss. Notes to accounts will be there. So much of notes to accounts will be there. Right? So this all the content shareholders will not be able to verify, and they cannot ask the board of directors only to verify. Why? Because they are the persons who have prepared the financial statements. We cannot ask them to verify by themselves only. right? So we want some independent person. We want some person who is not associated with the board of directors, who is not associated with the shareholders, to verify these financial statements and tell the shareholders whether these financial statements are reliable or not, that an independent auditor has to examine. Okay, so we have seen that auditor is going to express an opinion on what? On the financial information. And how he is going to express the opinion? After conducting the independent examination. After conducting what? After conducting the independent examination, he will give the opinion. Okay, so what do you mean by independent examination? So independent means generally the person who is conducting the audit, he should be independent. That means his decision should not be influenced by the decision of the board of directors, wishes of the board of directors. The opinion or the decisions which are taken by the auditor should not get influenced by the wishes of the management. We call it as independent. So auditor has to conduct independent examination, and independence is broadly categorized into two ways. Independence is broadly categorized into two ways. Independence is categorized into independence of mind and independence of appearance. Independence is classified into independence of mind and independence of appearance. So what do you mean by this, sir? What do you mean by independence of mind? What do you mean by independence of appearance? So independence of appearance means there should not be any relationship between the auditor and the client. There should not be any relationship between the auditor and the client. Auditor should not hold any shares in the company. His relative should not be working as a director. He should not be an officer or employee of the company. He should not be a partner or employee of an officer or employee of the company. If you are able to recollect, all these are disqualifications mentioned in the Companies Act. Right? So independence of appearance means there should be no relation. There should be no relationship between the auditor and the client. And what is this independence of mind? Independence of mind means attitude of working independently. Independence of mind means it is an attitude to work independently. So generally we try to have the independence of appearance ultimately to bring the independence of mind only. Why we are not appointing a person as an auditor who is having a shares in the company? Why? Because if he has a shares in the company, he will not act independently. He will not have that attitude to work independently. What he will think, if I give a negative opinion, I am also having the shares in the company. If I give a negative opinion, the share price of the company is going to fall. If the share price of the company is going to fall, the holdings which I am having in the company, they will also come down. So that's why we are having the independence of appearance. Whatever the disqualifications that we are having, the Companies Act, that the independence of appearance is required in order to bring the independence of mind. Independence of mind means in mind you have to agree that you will act independently. You will not get influenced. You are agreeing in the mind. Generally, independence of appearance we can find out, but independence of mind you cannot find out. It is actually that will be an agreement in the mind. Right? So independence of appearance we will come to know, but we will not be able to know independence of mind. Independence of mind means attitude of the auditor to work independently. Whereas independence in appearance means it is not having relationship with the client with which you are conducting the audit. Right? So audit is an independent examination. The auditor has to conduct independently examine. Examine means verification, scrutiny, analyze. All these are meanings of the examination. So an auditor is a person, an auditor is an activity which is an independent examination. That independence should be independence of mind as well as independence of appearance of what? Of the financial information. Of what? Of the financial information. Now, what do you mean by this financial information? So financial information, it actually contains two parts. It includes books of accounts and also financial statements. What do you mean by books of accounts? In today's environment, books of accounts means nothing but accounting software only. In our current terms, books of account means nothing but accounting softwares only. Accounting software like Tally, SAP, Oracle, all these are nothing but books of accounts. Right? in books of accounts, what there will be, so nowadays you might have learnt about so many concepts of the accounting, like passing of the journal entries, having the ledgers, preparing the trial balance, then balance sheet you have to prepare. All that is not required. In today's environment, what is the most that as an accountant you are expected to do? You have to know how to pass a journal entry only. You have to know how to pass a journal entry only. If you pass a journal entry, that's all. Everything till the finally it gets posted in the financial statements, everything will be taken by the software. Everything will be taken by the software. So in the today's environment, books of accounts means accounting software, and for each and every entry there will be some supportings or not. For each and every entry there will be some supportings. So that supporting could be in the form of bill, it could be in the form of voucher, it could be in the form of memo, it could be in the form of debit note, credit note, whatever it could be. There should be some supporting. So this accounting software and supportings are nothing but books of accounts. But it is defined under Companies Act. Legally, the term books of accounts has been defined as the records which are maintained in respect of receipts and payments, incomes and expenditure, assets and liabilities, and if your company is covered under cost record maintenance of cost records, then you are also required to maintain the cost records. If your company fulfills the conditions of sections of the Companies Act which requires you to maintain the cost records, then cost records will also form part of your books of accounts. So this is how the term has been defined. This is how the term books of accounts has been defined under the Companies Act. But practically books of accounts means nothing but accounting software and supportings only. But if we have to write the definition as per the Companies Act, so the Companies Act has defined the term books of accounts as follows. So if you observe, see here, as per the Companies Act 2013, books of accounts as defined in section 213 includes records maintained in respect of all sums of money and money received and expended, nothing but receipts and payments, nothing but cash book, all sales and purchases of goods and services made by the company, whatever sales and purchases that you are making, for that you have to maintain a record. That record also will be included in the books of accounts. The records maintained in respect of assets and liabilities, and if your company is covered under section 148, cost records will also come under the definition of the books of accounts. This is how the term books of accounts has been defined. Now, what do you mean by the financial statements? This financial statements has been defined under both Standards on Auditing and also Companies Act. This has been defined under Companies Act and also SA 200. So Companies Act, it contains inclusive definition. It defines financial statements as balance sheet, P&L, cash flow statement, and also statement of changes in equity, SOCE, and also notes to accounts. Right? So this is how the Companies Act defines the term financial statements as an inclusive definition, and it defines as follows. The definition starts as follows. It includes balance sheet, profit and loss, cash flow statement, statement of changes in equity, and notes to financial statements. This is how the term financial statements has been defined. In SA 200, the definition is a bit different. In SA 200, the definition is bit different. So if I ask you whether the financial statements will be prepared in a structured manner or will you prepare as you want? If I ask you, if you want to prepare a financial statements, will you prepare it in a structured manner or will you prepare as you require? Generally, I will prepare the financial statements in a structured manner only, right? So if I am preparing the financial statements of a company, I will follow vertical format. If I am preparing the financial statements of some sole proprietor partnership firm, I will follow horizontal balance sheet. So I will present these financial statements in some structured manner, and by presenting that financial statements, what I want to convey. So I am preparing this balance sheet, profit and loss in some structured manner. Okay, what is the purpose I am preparing these financial statements? Through these financial statements, as we have seen earlier in the example, the board of directors wants to communicate what are their assets and liabilities, and also what are their incomes and expenses, and what is their profit. Any person who is preparing the financial statements, by way of such a preparation, what does he want to communicate? He wants to communicate what are the assets and liabilities of such entity, what are the incomes and expenses, and what is the profit that the entity has earned during the period. Yes or no? This is nothing but financial statements, right? So this is how the financial statements are defined under SA 200. Definition as per SA 200 is structured representation of historical financial information. What they are telling you here, it is a historical financial information. So as per SA 200, the financial statements are a structured representation of historical financial information. We will present the information in a structured manner. What information we are going to present? We are going to present the financial information, assets, liabilities, incomes, expenses, profit, and this information is relating to the past period. Through financial statements, what financial information we are going to present? We are going to present the historical financial information. So for example, if you want to prepare financial statements for the financial year 18-19, will you prepare the financial statements after 31st March or before 31st March? Obviously, I will prepare the financial statements only after 31st of March 2019. That means whatever the transactions that have happened from 1st of April 2018 till 31st of March 2019, whatever the transactions that have already happened, whatever the information that is already happened in the past, that I am going to present after 31st March 2019 in a structured manner. So they are telling you it is a structured presentation of historical financial information. Historical financial information means the information which already happened in the past, including the related notes intended to communicate. What is the purpose of preparation of these financial statements? The intention is to communicate an entity's economic resources. Entity's economic resources means nothing but assets only. What are the resources that any entity will have? The entity will have resources as nothing but assets only, no? Right? So it is a structured presentation of historical financial information including related notes. And what is the intention of preparing that statements? To present entities' economic resources. Economic resources means assets or obligations. Obligations means what? Liabilities. So it is a structured presentation of historical financial information for what purpose? Which is intended to communicate an entity's economic resources, nothing but assets, or obligations, nothing but liabilities at a point in time. Balance sheet as at, what we will say? Balance sheet as at 31st March 2019. At a point in time, we will present the assets and liabilities, and also transactions which are happened during that period, or the changes therein for a period of time, that is for the financial year 2018-19. What are the economic resources and liabilities as at some date, and what are the changes that have happened during the year? Nothing but incomes, expenses, purchases, all this. So we are going to present a structured presentation of historical financial information intended to communicate entities' economic resources or obligations at a point in time, and the changes therein for a period of time in accordance with what? Here there is a new term once again. Applicable financial reporting framework. In accordance with what? In accordance with applicable financial reporting framework. Applicable financial reporting framework. Now, so once again we got a new term. So what is this applicable financial reporting framework? So let us try to understand this for some time. So first of all, what do you mean by framework? Framework means nothing but rules and regulations. Framework means nothing but what? Rules and regulations. And financial reporting means the process of preparation and presentation of financial statements. The term framework means rules and regulations, and the term financial reporting means the process of preparation and presentation of the financial statements. If we both put together these two terms, then what do you mean by financial reporting framework? The rules and regulations which are to be followed in the preparation and presentation of the financial statements, we call them as financial reporting framework. The rules and regulations which are to be followed in the preparation and presentation of the financial statements, we call them as what? Financial reporting framework. Now, what do you mean by this applicable financial reporting framework? So the term applicable financial reporting framework has been defined as, right, in view of the nature of the entity and objective of the financial statements. In view of nature of the entity and objective of the financial statements. So in view of the nature of the entity, right? So what do you mean by this nature of the entity? For example, you are a company. You are a company. So the company will prepare financial statements as per what rules and regulations? As per Schedule 3 and accounting standards. Yes or no? This you have done in your accounts. Next, when it comes to a banks, you will prepare financial statements as per what? Banking Regulation Act. Right? If you come to insurance company, in an insurance company you will prepare financial statements as per what? As per Insurance Regulatory and Development Act. Right? So in view of the nature of the entity, if it is a company, if it is a bank, if it is an insurance, depending upon the nature of the entity, the management of the company will adopt. Who will adopt? Management of the company will, management of the entity will adopt the rules and regulations which are to be followed in the preparation and presentation of the financial statements, that we call as a applicable financial reporting framework. In view of the nature of the entity and objective of the financial statements. For example, if the nature of the entity is a company, the management of the company will adopt applicable financial reporting framework. And financial reporting framework means the rules and regulations which are to be used in the preparation and presentation of the financial statements. So if it is a company, the management, since it is a company, on the nature of the entity, they will follow Schedule 3 and accounting standards in the preparation of the financial statements. So we call this Schedule 3 and accounting standard as a applicable financial reporting framework for a company. Right? So if it is a bank, the management of a banking company will adopt the rules which are there in the Banking Regulation Act for the preparation and presentation of the financial statements. So Banking Regulation Act will be a applicable financial reporting framework for a bank. If it is an insurance company, depending upon the nature of the entity, the management of that insurance company will prepare the financial statements according to the rules and regulations which are contained under the Insurance Act. So Insurance Act is a applicable financial reporting framework for a insurance company. So all these accounts you might have already done in, you might have prepared the financial statements of a company, you might have prepared the financial statements of a bank, you might have prepared the financial statements of insurance. In addition to that, you might have also prepared the financial statements of an electricity company also. So unknowingly you have already implemented 4 applicable financial reporting frameworks. Without your knowledge, even if you don't know that it is applicable financial reporting framework, without your knowledge only, you have already implemented 4 kinds of applicable financial reporting framework. And what do you mean by this applicable financial reporting framework? In view of the nature of the entity and objective of the financial statements, the framework adopted by the management for the preparation and presentation of the financial statements, we call it as a applicable financial reporting framework. Financial reporting framework means nothing but the rules and regulations which are to be followed in the preparation and presentation of the financial statements. Now, so let us see what are the types of frameworks. So there are different types of framework. First thing, on the basis of the purpose. On the basis of the purpose of the financial statements are categorized into two ways. What are they? General purpose financial statements and special purpose financial statements. On the basis of purpose, the financial statements are classified into 2 categories: general purpose financial statements and special purpose financial statements. So general purpose financial statements are those financial statements which are prepared as per general purpose framework, and special purpose financial statements are those financial statements which are prepared as per special purpose framework. This is how the term special purpose financial statements have been defined. So if you observe here, so special purpose financial statements, the financial statements which are prepared in accordance with the special purpose framework are called as special purpose financial statements. Now, what do you mean by special purpose framework? So what they are telling, special purpose framework that refers to that framework which satisfies the information requirements of a specific user of the financial statements. If the financial statements which you are preparing, that financial statements are satisfying the financial information needs of a specific user only. If for the purpose of a specific user you are preparing the financial statements, that financial statements will not be useful for any other person. Those financial statements are prepared according to the rules and regulations in order to satisfy the information requirements of a specific user only. We call such a framework as a special purpose framework. We call such a framework as special purpose framework. Example, so you went to the banker for a loan. Banker is asking you to prepare the financial statements on cash basis, not on accrual basis. The bank manager is asking you to prepare the financial statements not on accrual basis, specifically for the purpose of loan. He wants a set of financial statements which are prepared on cash basis. So here you are following the rules and regulations. Here you are following a framework that is cash basis of presentation. This framework will meet the information needs of only a specific user who is a banker. Other than this banker, no one will accept you the financial statements which are prepared on the cash basis. So the framework which satisfies the information needs of a specific user only, we call such a framework as a special purpose framework. Now, what do you mean by this general purpose framework? General purpose framework refers to that framework which satisfies information needs of various users of the financial statements. If it satisfies the various financial information needs of various users, if a single set of rules and regulations are going to satisfy information needs of various users, you are preparing the financial statements according to some rules and regulations, not for the purpose of a specific person, in order to meet the financial information needs of so many users, you are going to prepare a financial statements. We call such a financial statements as, we call such a framework as general purpose framework. General purpose framework. If the single set of financial statements is going to satisfy information needs of various users of the financial statements, we call it as a general purpose framework. So if you observe here, so first they are telling you what do you mean by general purpose financial statements. If the financial statements are prepared in accordance with the general purpose framework, then they are called as general purpose financial statements. Now what do you mean by general purpose framework? A financial reporting framework designed to meet the common information needs of, the common financial information needs of a wide range of users. If a wide range of users' information needs are getting satisfied by a single framework, we call it as a general purpose framework. Who will be the users of the financial statements? Who will be the users? The primary user will be shareholder. He wants to know about the financial position because he is the person who has invested his money in the company. And one more user of the financial information is management. Management is the other person who requires the financial information. Okay, next, who else will be the users? Bankers, lenders, they will give the loan on the basis of the financial statements. Employees may need the financial statements. Government will need the financial statements. Government will want to know whether the tax that you are paying, whether it is correct or not. How the government will come to know? By going through your financial statements. Why the employees want you? Why the employee is a user of the financial statements? Because he wants to know whether bonus is paid correctly or not, whether there is a job security or not. Employees will also use the financial information. Okay, next, in addition to employees, who else will be there? Creditors. They want to know credit worthiness. If they sell you the goods on credit, whether they will be able to repay them or not, the creditors wants to know. Debtors wants to know. Debtors are the users of the financial statements. Why? Because before they enter into a long-term projects with you, they want to know whether you will be able to continue in the future or not. So the debtors also is one of the users of the financial statements because they want to know about the future viability of the entity. How they will come to know about the future viability of the entity? By going through the financial statements only. And who else will be other users? Research scholars. There will be so many analysts who will be analyzing our company, who will be preparing the reports on our company, right? So in the investment banking companies, there will be research analysts or research scholars who are going to study our financial statements and they will prepare a report on us, right? So all these are different users of the financial statements. If you observe here, who are the different users? Management for day-to-day decision making, shareholders for performance profitability, lenders determine the strength of the company, suppliers to determine the credit worthiness, customers to know the general business viability, government to ensure prompt collection of taxes, and also whether your social objectives are met or not. So nowadays CSR is mandatory for certain class of companies. So whether you are properly discharging your social objectives or not, the government will also come to know through your financial statements. Research scholars, analysts, for research purposes, they are also going to use your financial statements, and also employees are also one of the users of the financial statements. Why employees will use the financial statements? Job security and bonus. So all these different users' information needs are getting satisfied by a single set of framework, by a single set of rules and regulations. Then we call it as a general purpose framework. If it is satisfying information needs of a different users of the financial statements, we call it as a general purpose framework. What are the financial needs of different users? These general uses of the different users are given in fundamental accounting assumptions. It is the usage of every person. It is the financial information need of every person. So every person will expect that the financial statements will be prepared as per fundamental accounting assumptions, going concern, accrual, consistency. And these common information needs are generally accepted accounting principles. Common information needs include generally accepted accounting principles also. They include accounting standards also, and they need the information periodically. They need the information annually. In India, we prepare the financial statements annually from the month of April till the month of March. From 1st of April till the 31st March of next year, we are going to prepare the financial statements. So different users will want the financial information annually. They want the financial statements prepared on the basis of fundamental accounting assumptions. They want the financial statements prepared as per generally accepted accounting principles, and they also want to prepare the financial statements as per the accounting standards. So these are all the common information needs of different users, and these are also characteristics of general purpose framework. These are also nothing but characteristics of the general purpose framework. So if you observe here, see here we are telling what are the characteristics of this general purpose framework. They follow fundamental accounting assumptions, they comply with the generally accepted accounting principles, they follow accounting standards, and they are prepared annually or periodically. They will not be prepared for irregular intervals, they will be prepared for a period of time. For regular intervals, they are going to prepare the financial statements annually. Right? Whereas special purpose financial statements, they may not be prepared periodically. They may not be prepared on a fundamental accounting assumption basis. For example, here banker example only, he is not following accrual basis. Accrual is generally accepted, but he is following a cash basis. Right? So these are the characteristics of a general purpose framework. These characteristics may or may not be there in the special purpose framework. Right? So on the basis of financial statements, there are two types of frameworks, that is a general purpose framework and fair presentation framework. Next is on the basis of presentation. On the basis of presentation, frameworks are once again classified into two categories. On the basis of presentation, frameworks are once again classified into two categories. What are they? It is fair presentation framework and compliance framework. It is a fair presentation framework and compliance framework. So we are going to discuss about the types of frameworks on the basis of the presentation, and on the basis of the presentation, frameworks are once again classified into two categories: compliance framework and fair presentation framework. That we are going to discuss now, that we are going to revise now. We were discussing about the types of frameworks. So in that we have discussed on the basis of purpose, the financial statements are classified into two categories: general purpose financial statements and special purpose financial statements. General purpose financial statements are those which are prepared as per general purpose framework, and also special purpose financial statements are those which are prepared as per special purpose framework. We have seen what do you mean by this general purpose framework, and we have also seen what do you mean by this special purpose framework. Now, on the basis of presentation, frameworks are once again classified into two categories. What are they? They are fair presentation framework and compliance framework. First of all, what do you mean by compliance framework? Compliance framework refers to that framework where the financial statements will be prepared according to the requirements of such framework. It refers to the framework where financial statements are prepared as per the requirements of such framework without any deviation. Without any deviation. So there will not be any deviation from the requirements of the framework. We will follow as it is. For example, if you remember special purpose financial statements which were prepared as per the requirements of a banker, we have prepared the financial statements on the basis of cash, not on accrual basis. So here we know that even if we follow cash basis of accounting for the preparation of financial statements, will the financial statements give a true and fair view? Obviously not. But still we will follow that framework even though they are not giving a true and fair view. So without any deviation, we will not deviate from the requirements of the framework. We will follow as it is whatever mentioned in the framework. We call such a framework as compliance framework, the framework where financial statements will be prepared according to the requirements of such framework without any deviation. We will not deviate, right? So what do you mean by this fair presentation framework? So let me discuss with the help of an example, right? For example, there is a machinery which the company has bought for 10 lakh rupees. So as per Companies Act, we have to follow either SLM method or WDV method. So under Companies Act, for this machinery specifically under SLM, the rate of depreciation has been provided as 10%, and under WDV the rate of depreciation has been provided as 15%. So if we follow SLM, we have to depreciate 1 lakh rupees, we have to show depreciation as 1 lakh. If we follow WDV method, we have to show 1.5 lakhs as a depreciation. So the Companies Act permits you to follow either SLM or WDV only, but not any other method. Now let me tell you the consumption pattern of this machinery. For example, this machinery was designed to produce exactly 10,000 units. Assume that this is a kind of machinery which exactly produces 10,000 units. After 10,000 units, the machinery would stop working. And for example, in the year 1, 3,000 units are already produced. In the year 2, only 1,000 units are produced, and in the year 3, 3,000 units once again, and year 4 there is once again some 2,000 units, and year 5 1,000 units. So totally 10,000 units are consumed over a period of 5 years in this manner, right? So if you observe, out of the 10,000 units, 30,000 we have 3,000 units, that is 30% we have utilized in year 1, 10% we have utilized in year 2, 30% was utilized in year 3, 20% was utilized in year 4, and again 10% was utilized in year 5. So if we follow SLM, the depreciation would have been 1 lakh. If you follow WDV method, the depreciation would have been 1.5 lakhs. But here the consumption of the machinery, if you see the consumption of the machinery, we are consuming 30%. So out of total 10 lakhs, 3 lakh we have consumed. Here another 1 lakh we have consumed in year 2, one more 3 lakh we have consumed in year 3, and 2 lakhs have been consumed in year 4, and 1 lakh has been consumed in the year 5, right? So this is actually the manner of consumption. But if you follow blindly the requirements of the applicable financial reporting framework, they will tell you either to depreciate 1 lakh or depreciate 1.5 lakhs. But more appropriate, but more fair view is when you depreciate this machinery on the basis of units produced. This will be more fair when compared to these two matters. When compared to these two, this will give a better presentation of the depreciation. I think you all agree with me with this regarding this. So in case of fair presentation framework, what will happen is, let me tell you, in case of fair presentation framework, how it is defined was, so it refers to the framework where financial statements will be prepared according to the requirements of such framework, and they may deviate from the requirements of the framework, or may provide additional disclosures beyond the requirements of such framework in order to achieve fair presentation. In order to achieve what? Fair presentation. In order to have a fair presentation, if we can deviate from the requirements of the framework, or you can provide additional disclosures beyond the requirements of such framework, for what purpose? For the purpose of achieving the fair presentation. For the purpose of achieving fair presentation, you are permitted to deviate from the requirements of such framework, or you may provide the additional disclosures which are beyond the requirements of such framework. Then we say such kind of framework as fair presentation framework. So here, if you follow, what would be, if you follow fair presentation framework, we can show the depreciation as 3 lakhs. So in the framework, they have told you that either to follow SLM or WDV. If we follow that, our depreciation would have been 1 lakh or 1.5 lakhs. But more fair presentation of depreciation is actually 3 lakhs. So here we can deviate from the requirements whatever told in the Companies Act, and we can follow this units produced method in order to have a better presentation or a fair presentation. So such kind of framework where we are allowed to deviate from the requirements of such framework or provide the disclosures beyond the requirements of such framework, for what purpose? For the purpose of achieving the fair presentation, such kind of framework will be known as fair presentation framework. Right? Now tell me, in which there will be a true and fair view? In which there will be a true and fair view? In fair presentation framework or compliance framework? There will be a true and fair view in the case of fair presentation framework. Whereas in the case of compliance framework, there may or may not be fair view. There may or may not be true and fair view. Why? Because take the example of this cash basis of preparation of financial statements. There we are following the framework without any deviation. Will the financial statements which are prepared on the basis of cash, will they give a true and fair view? Obviously cannot, right? So we will have a true and fair view in the case of fair presentation framework. There may or may not be true and fair view in the case of compliance framework. And most of the special purpose financial statements, they follow fair presentation, they follow compliance framework. Most of the special purpose financial statements, they follow compliance framework, and most of the general purpose financial statements follow fair presentation framework. What do you mean by this fair presentation framework? You may deviate from the requirements of the framework, or you may provide additional disclosure. So we have seen deviation. Sir, what do you mean by this additional disclosure? So I have told you that in order to achieve a true and fair view, you will not follow either SLM, you will not follow either WDV, you will directly go and follow units producing method. This is a complete deviation from the requirements. Or you can provide additional disclosures also. What is additional disclosure? You will follow either any one of these, 1 lakh or 1.5 lakh. You will follow either SLM or WDV for providing for the depreciation. But in notes to accounts, you will give an additional note. You will give an additional disclosure. You will say that as per the requirements of such framework, we have followed SLM method, but better presentation would have been made if we have followed the units produced method. If we have followed that method, our depreciation would have been this much, 3 lakhs, and because of this, our profit would have been reduced by this much. Our balance sheet in the balance sheet or fixed assets balance would have been this much. So like this additional disclosure also you can provide in the financial statements. This disclosure is not required in the framework. Accounting Standards or Companies Act does not require you to give this additional disclosure. But you are providing the additional disclosure for what purpose? For achieving the fair presentation. Okay, so fair presentation framework refers to that framework which may deviate from the requirements or may provide additional disclosure requirements in order to achieve the fair presentation. Now tell me the company final accounts which you are going to prepare. Whatever the company final accounts which you are preparing, whether they are compliance framework or fair presentation framework. The answer is they will be prepared as per fair presentation framework. Why? Why, sir? Why do we follow fair presentation framework? We have to comply with the Companies Act and Accounting Standards. No. So The Act says, Section 128 says, Section 128 and Section 129, they deal with the accounts of the company, and also they will deal with the financial statements. There they say in the Companies Act, the financial statements should be prepared as per accounting standards, as per the provisions of the Companies Act, and they should also give true and fair view. They should also give true and fair view. They will not stop here. They will not stop. They will not just say they have to follow Accounting Standards and Companies Act. If they have said only just that part, they have to be prepared as per Accounting Standards and Companies Act, then we will agree that it is a compliance framework. But what does the Act says? The financial statements should be prepared as per Accounting Standards, Companies Act. It will not stop there. The Act will also say that they should also give a true and fair view. They will also say that they are required to be prepared as per accounting standards, they are required to be prepared as per Companies Act, and also they should give a true and fair view. So by usage of this additional statement, that means the Companies Act itself is permitting us to deviate from the requirements in order to achieve a true and fair view. Okay, so the company financial statements which we are going to prepare, the company financial statements which you will prepare, those are generally prepared on the basis of fair presentation framework. Okay, so this is how it has been defined. So it refers to a framework. So compliance framework, it refers to a framework where financial statements are prepared and presented in accordance with the requirements without any deviation. Without any deviation, they will be prepared. True and fair view will generally be not available in the case of compliance framework, and also most of the special purpose financial statements will be prepared as per the compliance framework. Next, what do you mean by fair presentation? They are prepared as per the requirement. They are prepared as per the requirements of such framework, and the definition is extended here, and contains the disclosures beyond the requirements of such framework, or may deviate from the requirements of the framework so as to achieve a fair presentation. They can also deviate from the requirements, or they can provide additional disclosures beyond the requirements of such framework. For what purpose? In order to achieve the fair presentation. So in order to achieve fair presentation, you can deviate from the requirements of the framework also. Now, so generally fair presentation framework contains a true and fair view, and most of the general purpose financial statements are prepared as per fair presentation framework. Okay, now what do you mean by auditor? So auditor means what? So simply saying, the person who conducts the audit is called as an auditor. As simple as that. What do you mean by auditor? The person who conducts the audit is known as an auditor. And the person, for example, I am a practicing chartered accountant. If I am appointed as the auditor of so and so company, I will be called as a engagement partner. See, first of all, audit is also a engagement. Audit is nothing but a contract of service. As an auditor, we are agreeing to provide some services to our client. So audit is also nothing but like a contract only. We also call this service contracts or whatever the contracts as engagement. Engagement, service, contract, whatever we say. So audit is also a engagement. As an auditor, we can take up a number of engagements, and one of such engagement is audit. As an audit, we can provide services in so many areas. All these services will be known as engagements, contracts, and audit is one of the engagements which can be carried out by the auditor. So for example, there is a chartered accountant. He is a practicing chartered accountant. He has been appointed as an auditor of the company. So he will be called as an engagement partner. Will a single engagement partner go and complete the entire audit? No. So he will have a team or not? So there will be article assistant, senior article assistant, junior article assistant, right? Paid assistants, audit managers, right? So all this together, put together, will be called as auditor only. When we are referring to the term auditor, it doesn't refer to only engagement partner. All this team, these article assistants, audit managers, paid assistants, engagement partner, whoever the team is involved in conducting the audit, we refer that entire engagement team as an auditor only. Auditor just doesn't refer to the engagement partner, it includes the entire team which is conducting the audit. So all this put together, entire team will be called as engagement team. And when we say auditor, it doesn't include engagement partner only, it includes the entire engagement team also. But whenever it comes to the responsibility, and representations before the regulatory authorities. So for example, if in future any mistake was found out, will they go and arrest the article assistant? No, the responsibility will be on the engagement partner. So when it comes to the responsibility related matters like signing of the auditor's report, right, being responsible to regulatory authorities, their auditor does not refer to engagement team, their auditor refers to engagement partner only. When it comes to responsibility areas, for example, who can sign the auditor's report? Not the entire engagement team. An article assistant cannot go and sign the auditor's report on behalf of the auditor. So when it comes to the responsibility related matters, auditor refers to the engagement partner only, and generally in other circumstances, auditor includes the entire team who are conducting the audit. This team will be called as engagement team, and it includes engagement partner, senior article assistant, junior article assistant, paid assistant, audit manager, whatever name you give. Okay, whoever involved in that team, that entire team will be called as a engagement partner. That entire team will be called as an auditor. So what are the objectives of the auditor? What are the objectives of the auditor? Right. So as per SA 200, there are broadly two objectives. So the auditor has to obtain reasonable assurance. Whether financial statements are free from material misstatements. Whether the financial statements are free from material misstatements, and whether they are prepared as per applicable financial reporting framework. And also he has to report on the financial statements as per relevant standards on auditing. So as per SA 200, the auditor is having broadly two objectives. What are that broad two objectives? First one, the auditor should obtain reasonable assurance. What is this reasonable assurance? We will come back to it later. What do you mean by this reasonable assurance? We will come back to this later. So first thing, let us see. He has to obtain some assurance that financial statements are free from material misstatements. So now there is one more new term, misstatement. Misstatement. What do you mean by this misstatement? Misstatement means nothing but, in simple terminology, misstatement means mistake only. Something wrong presentation, wrong picture, showing a wrong picture. Some mistake. It is a simple meaning of the term misstatement. But actually there is a definition given to this term misstatement in the standards. So the term misstatement has been defined as any difference between amount, presentation, classification, disclosure in the reported financial statements and amount, presentation, classification, disclosure as per applicable financial reporting framework. So if there is any difference between amount, presentation, classification, disclosure, which is already there in the reported financial statements, and as per applicable financial reporting framework something else is required, then we say there is a misstatement. For example, so as per the applicable financial reporting framework, inventory should be valued at, as per AS2, inventory should be valued at cost or NRV, whichever is lower. So the cost is 8 lakhs, the NRV is 10 lakhs, whichever is lower. So as per applicable financial reporting framework, that is as per AS2, the amount for the inventory in the balance sheet should have been 8 lakhs. As per the applicable financial reporting framework, the amount of inventory should be 8 lakhs. But in the financial statements, the amount of inventory has been shown as 10 lakhs. So in the reported financial statements, the amount is 10 lakhs, and as per applicable financial reporting framework, the amount is 8 lakhs. There is a difference. We call this difference as a misstatement. or there could be a difference in the classification. There could be a difference in the classification. For example, take fixed assets, plant, property and equipment standard. In that, what they will say, for example, you have bought some machinery. You have bought some machinery and you have arranged the transport facility. You are bringing this by way of a truck. Okay. So you are bringing this by way of a truck to your factory premises. You have bought this machinery and you are bringing this machinery by way of a truck through your factory premises, and you have paid a transport charge of 10,000. Right. So this amount should be treated as a capital expenditure. This amount has to be classified as a capital expenditure as per the accounting standards. But the company in its report, the management in its financial statements, they have classified it as a revenue expenditure, whereas as per the applicable financial reporting framework, the expenditure should have been classified as a capital expenditure. The expenditure should have been classified as a capital expenditure. So there is a difference in the classification between what? There is a difference in the classification as per reported financial statements and as per applicable financial reporting framework. This difference will also be called as misstatement only. Now, there could be a difference in the presentation also. There could be a difference in the presentation also. For example, if you see the presentation of the debtors, as per applicable financial reporting framework, so if you are having some debtors of 10 lakh rupees and you are having provision for depreciation, so the provision for depreciation should be shown as a deduction from the debtors on the asset side. So the total debtors position should be shown under the balance sheet side on the assets as 8 lakhs. So this is the presentation which is required as per applicable financial reporting framework. When you are having provision for bad and doubtful debts, how you have to present? You have to show it as a deduction from the debtors and show the net balance under the asset side. For example, in the financial statements which are prepared by the management, they are showing debtors in the asset side of 10 lakhs and a provision for bad and doubtful debts as 2 lakhs under liabilities. 2 lakhs under liabilities. So generally, if you show it here, the person who is going through these financial statements, he will come to know there is a 10 lakhs of debtors, but actually there is a 2 lakhs provision. So total is 8 lakhs. So if you show it separately, if you mix with some liabilities, the user of the financial statements may not get a picture that out of this 10 lakh debtors, 2 lakh debtors we will not be able to realize. Right? So he will not be able to have this reasonable understanding in order to avoid that. What did applicable financial reporting framework say? To present in this manner. But the management, when preparing the financial statements, they have not shown provision for doubtful debts as a reduction from the debtors. They have mixed it with the other liabilities under short-term provisions head. So there is a difference in the presentation or not. So the difference in the presentation as per the reported financial statements, and there is a difference in the presentation as per the applicable financial reporting framework. We also call this difference as a misstatement. Or there can be a difference in the disclosure also. So as per applicable financial reporting framework, you are required to disclose something. For example, there is a contingent liability. There is a pending litigation going on in the company. The case is not yet decided. If the case is still going on, the proceedings are still going on. So as per the accounting standards, you are required to show it as a contingent liability. But you have missed this disclosure. In the reported financial statements, the financial statements does not contain any disclosure relating to this contingent liabilities only. There is no disclosure in the financial statements only. So here we say there is a difference in the disclosures which is required as per the applicable financial reporting framework and which is actually there in the reported financial statements. You have not disclosed some information fully. Right? So for example, if you have not presented this information relating to contingent liability in the financial statements, the user of the financial statements will not know about this information. He will feel that everything is good only. He will invest in the company. After you have invested in the company, the case was decided against the company, and at a time the company recognized 100 crores as a provision. So all of a sudden the profits are reduced. So there is a case going on in the company for past 5 years. You are required to show it as a contingent liability under the notes to accounts, but you did not show. since you did not show, the shareholder was not aware of this information and he has bought shares in the company. After he has bought, all of a sudden this case was materialized, the company has lost the case, and at a time 100 crores of liability provision was created once at a time. So because of this, the shareholder will be badly affected or not? Obviously he will be affected. So if there is any difference in the disclosure requirements which is there in the reported financial statements and which is required as per applicable financial reporting framework, then also we call it as a misstatement. So the term definition, the misstatement definition is if there is any difference between amount presentation, classification, disclosure in the reported financial statements and amount presentation, classification, disclosure as per applicable financial reporting framework, then we say there is a misstatement. And we all know that this misstatement can happen because of two reasons. Misstatement can be as a result of fraud and it could be error also. Misstatement could be a fraud and it could be error also. What is this fraud? What is the main point of difference between fraud and error? In case of fraud, it is done intentionally. It is done intentionally. What do you mean by error? It is done unintentionally. It is done unintentionally. We have no intention of cheating the other persons. It happened by mistake. Right? Humans are prone to error, right? So like that, some error, intentional, intentional, if it is done intentionally, then we say it as a fraud. We are going to discuss about this fraud in a separate chapter, fraud and responsibilities of the auditor. And errors are we know, it is unintentional. Okay, so misstatement, the definition of misstatement is this, and misstatement can happen because of two reasons, of fraud or error. So the responsibilities or objectives of the auditor as per SA 200, or he has to obtain reasonable assurance that the financial statements are free from misstatements. Free from misstatements means there are misstatements or there are no misstatements. Free from misstatement means there should not be any misstatements. The auditor should get the assurance regarding that, and he should also get assurance that they are prepared as per the applicable financial reporting framework. And the auditor also should get an assurance that they are prepared, that the financial statements are prepared as per the applicable financial reporting framework. And also whatever he is going to report, that should be as per relevant standards on auditing. That we are going to, what are relevant standards on auditing, what are the reporting requirements of each and every standard, we will come across when we proceed further. When we proceed further to the next concepts, we will come across a lot of standards, and each standard will have some reporting requirements. All those reporting requirements should be met when you are reporting on the financial statements. So these are the objectives of the auditor: to obtain reasonable assurance whether the financial statements are free from material misstatements and are prepared as per applicable financial reporting framework. And also the auditor should report on the financial statements as per the relevant standards. As per the relevant standards on auditing. And what are the reporting requirements of this relevant standards on auditing, we will come across when we proceed further in our discussion. Now, so what is the purpose of the audit? This purpose of the audit we have already discussed. So we have seen that the management, that is nothing but board of directors will be given the money by way of share capital. Right, this money will be lying with the board of directors. The board of directors will conduct the business, and they are the only persons who will prepare the financial statements also. As a shareholder, I give the money to the board of directors. Board of directors will do the business. They will buy the assets. They will do the sales. They will incur the expenditure. They will arrive at the net profit. Everything, the business will be handled by the board of directors only. And who will prepare the financial statements of the entity? Obviously management only. Management means nothing but the same board of directors. So they are only preparing the financial statements, and they are only asking you to rely on that financial statements. Will you be able to rely on that? No. Then how you will get the confidence? How as a shareholder you are going to get the confidence that whatever the assets in the balance sheet shown by the management in the financial statements, is it correct or not? And whatever the profit that is shown in the statement of profit and loss by the management of the company, is it correct? Is it reliable? How you are going to get a confidence on the financial statements which are prepared by the management? By way of audit. So the purpose of audit is to increase the confidence of the users. Increase the confidence of the users. How this confidence will be increased? Because the auditor will verify the accuracy of the financial statements. because the auditor will verify whatever the financial statements that the management have prepared, whether they are accurate or not, whether they are reliable or not. So this accuracy will be verified by the auditor. This accuracy will be verified by the auditor. Whatever the financial statements that the management or a board of directors have prepared, whether those financial statements are accurate or not, the auditor is going to verify them once, and on the basis of that verification, he will give a comment whether they are reliable or not. So by way of verifying the accuracy and arithmetical accuracy and validity of that financial statements, the auditor, the function of audit is going to increase the confidence of the users of the financial statements. That is the purpose. Now let me ask you one thing, right? So the auditor has verified the financial statements and he thought that the financial statements contain no misstatement, right? The information presented by the financial statements is true and fair only. So he gave a unmodified opinion. Is he giving, can this opinion be considered as a guarantee that the entity is performing very well? In future, the company will not face any problem. The future of the company is very good. Like that, is the auditor giving any guarantee? Not at all. The auditor just verify the historical information which is presented in the financial statements. He will verify them once and he will try to assure whether the information presented in the financial statements is accurate or not. That's all. He does not say whether by way of giving an opinion, he is not giving any guarantee that in future the company's future will be very bright. The company is not going to incur losses. The company will perform excellent in the future. Like that, he is not giving any guarantee. And also, he is not giving any guarantee regarding the effectiveness of the management. Also, the auditor's opinion cannot be taken as a guarantee for the efficiency and effectiveness of the management. By giving opinion, auditor will not guarantee regarding future viability of the entity, and also he does not provide any guarantee regarding the efficiency and effectiveness of the management. He also does not guarantee that the management is doing their operations effectively, efficiently. He will not give any sort of guarantee. He will not give any sort of guarantee. Okay, so auditor's opinion cannot be construed as a guarantee for future viability of the entity, and also that does not, and the auditor's opinion also does not guarantee regarding the efficiency and effectiveness of the management. What auditor will do? Just he will verify the historical financial information and he will verify whether that information is correct or not. Whatever has actually happened, that amount, whatever has actually happened, that was actually presented in the financial statements or not. That's all. Nothing much. If there is a loss and the loss has been actually presented in the financial statements, during the year company has incurred 100 crores of loss, and the management, while preparing the financial statements, they have shown that only. They have shown that they have incurred a loss of 100 crores. The auditor, if the loss has actually incurred and management has actually presented that loss in the entity, there is no mistake only. He will say unqualified opinion only. He will give unqualified opinion only. Why? Because there is a loss. Sir, there is a loss. No, sir. How can he give unqualified opinion? Auditor's opinion has nothing to do with the profit or loss of the entity. Whether there is a profit, whether there is a loss, this profit situation, loss situation, whether it has been adequately presented in the financial statements. That's all auditor is going to verify. There is actually a loss of 100 crores. The management has correctly presented the financial statement showing the loss of 100 crores. Here auditor will not going to modify his opinion. He will go and give an unmodified opinion only. Auditor has nothing to do with the profit or loss of the entity. He is just concerned about whether the information presented in the financial statements is clear or not, is true and fair or not. That's all his responsibility. Okay, so these are all the implications. These are the implications of the audit opinion. It cannot be construed as a guarantee regarding two items, regarding the future viability or efficiency and effectiveness of the management. He will just verify the historical financial information, and on that basis he will express an opinion whether they are reliable or not. That's all. With that, his duty will come to end. He has nothing to do with the future viability or effectiveness of the management's operations.
Hi students, I am Prakash, Academic Advisor, Masterminds. Just now you have watched a sample video of our rapid revision batches for CA Inter level. So we are very happy to say that we have developed this kind of rapid revision batches for all the subjects of CA Inter and IPCC level. And if you are interested, then you can directly purchase rapid revision batch videos of your choice from our app. So first of all, you please do install our Android app Masterminds Online Classes from Google Play Store. So after that, click the option Store. After that, select the filter CA Inter RRB. CA Inter RRB. Yeah, here it is CA Inter RRB. So whatever the subject you want, you can purchase the same. And for each video, there will be around 6 months of validity. That means whenever you purchase a course, there will be 6 months of validity. That means you can watch at any time before 6 months after the date of purchase. And we will be giving 1.5 views. That means each 1 hour of video you can watch for around 1.5 hours. And these videos can be watched directly in your mobile phone. And if you belong to iOS platform, then please do install an app called Class Plus and enter the organization code as MZGUN. I hope that you liked the sample video of RRB subject being uploaded by us, and please do subscribe this channel so that you can receive a notification whenever we add a new video, and also press the like button if you really like this video, and also press the bell icon so that you will receive a notification. And please do send a mail to my mail ID if at all you have any academic doubts or issues. My mail ID is mssprakash2012@gmail.com. So once you visit our app, not only RRB videos, you can find large number of other videos also. If you belong to CA Inter, then so in the filter section you can select the option CA Inter. Then all the videos related to CA Inter will be visible to you. So just now I have pressed the option of CA Inter. Now all these are the videos available for CA Inter. For example, if you want to watch the videos of a particular subject at CA Inter level, or a particular chapter at CA Inter level, either of regular batch or crash batch, all such videos are already available in the app. So the videos related to CA Inter regular batches, videos related to CA Inter crash batches are already available in this app. Either you can purchase a particular subject, or sometimes even some few chapters, or even the entire group you can purchase directly from the app. That is the convenience with which you can watch the videos by installing our app. All the best. Let's have a glimpse into the roots of the Masterminds. So Masterminds were established in 2002 and is undeniably the pioneer and the leader in MEC, CA and CMA coaching in India, with a lion's share of nearly 20,000 admissions per annum. It is an incredible initiative by 3 visionary edupreneurs. That is me, MSS Prakash, Chartered Accountant, my brother Mohan, my sister-in-law Radha, from the same family at a very young age, under the successful mentorship of our father, Mr. M. Sivaprasad. Within the shortest span, our presence have expanded to almost all major cities of AP and Telangana. We are humbled to say that very soon we want to expand to the states of Karnataka and Tamil Nadu also, so especially with the wishes and support of all our old students. We offer best quality services for MEC with integrated coaching for CRCMA Foundation. Exclusive MEC CEC coaching is also available. Regular class, study hours and revision exams, MMTS services for all the levels of CSCMA courses, And recently we launched a unique academic program called MEC Pro, aiming the students who aspire to pursue BBA, CLAT or MBA in future rather than CA, CMA courses, and we have received excellent response. So our students have achieved first rank for 47 times in various courses that we offer coaching. Till now, our students have bagged 977 All India ranks in all the stages of CA and CMA courses. So 98 All India ranks in a single attempt of CMA inter and final exams, and 180 All India ranks in CA, CMA courses in 2019 and 20 alone. So 3 All India first ranks in the year 2020 alone. So right now we have around 150 batches of various courses in Guntur and all our branches together.